Why was everyone staring at her? Maybe it was the gray in her hair, or maybe it was the silence that followed her in like a shadow. Chief Warrant Officer 4 Anna Sharma stepped into the mess hall of Forward Operating Base Erebus with the quiet certainty of someone who knew exactly where she belonged and who didn't need to prove it to anyone. But the young Marines didn't see that. They just saw a woman in a fresh uniform. No dust, no salt lines, no swagger. The kind of person who looked like she typed reports, not fired rifles. The air inside was thick enough to chew, diesel fumes from the generators mixed with scorched dust from the Helmand wasteland, the metallic taste of gun oil, and the greasy smoke of burned rations. For the boys of Bravo Company, that smell was home. Their laughter was sharp, too loud for the concrete space. Knuckles drummed on tables, spoons clattered against tin trays, young men pretending not to be scared. And into that noise walked the quiet woman who didn't belong. Anna's movements were precise, a rhythm of efficiency. She didn't hurry, didn't hesitate. A scoop of rehydrated eggs, 2 limp strips of bacon, a cup of black coffee. Then to the far corner where the light didn't reach and no one else sat. She took the seat with her back to the wall, not from fear but from habit. But the habit said things the others didn't understand. They watched her, they judged her. Sergeant Cole, all jawline and bravado, leaned back in his chair like he owned the air around him. "Check it out," he muttered, jerking his chin toward her. "New REMF in town." REMF, rear echelon mother. The worst insult a grunt could throw. Corporal Davis snickered, too eager to please. "Looks like my high school librarian, Sarge." PFC Miller, the baby of the group, chimed in, desperate to earn his place. "Bet she's got the Dewey Decimal System for MREs." Laughter rolled through the table. The kind that makes men feel taller for a second. She didn't look up. She just ate her eggs, one slow bite at a time, her eyes fixed somewhere distant, as if she was listening to something none of them could hear. In her stillness there was weight, and that weight irritated them. Cole pushed back from the table. The legs of his chair screeched across the concrete floor, cutting through the noise. "Let's go welcome the new CWO to the real world, boys." They rose with him, swaggering across the room in a loose formation, laughter still hanging around their mouths, a pack of wolves that didn't realize the thing they were circling wasn't prey. They surrounded her table, not touching, just close enough to make it clear she wasn't going anywhere. Cole planted his hands on the edge of her table. "Ma'am," he said with a grin, voice dripping with that fake politeness Marines use before trouble. "Sergeant Cole, Bravo 16, just wanted to make sure you're settling in okay. Gets pretty rough out here for folks from behind the wire." Anna took her time. She finished chewing, swallowed, and finally looked up. Her eyes were gray, not cold, not angry, just flat, observing, like she'd seen 1,000 versions of this conversation before. "I'm fine, Sergeant," she said, voice low, almost hoarse, like it had been sanded down by years of shouting over rotor wash. Cole smiled wider. "Good to hear. Sometimes the paperwork gets a little loud out here. Wouldn't want you rattled when the real bullets start flying." More laughter. Anna took a sip of her coffee, steady as a metronome, set the cup down without a sound. "I'll try to manage," she said. No emotion, no sarcasm, just stillness. It threw him off. He'd expected a flustered response, maybe a nervous laugh. But this wall of calm, it infuriated him. He leaned closer. "You know, ma'am," he said, lowering his voice, "this isn't like Pendleton. The bad guys out here shoot back." Around them, other Marines started watching. Even a lieutenant from the S4 logistics section glanced up, then looked away fast. No one interfered. No one ever does when it's social order at play. Anna picked up her fork again. "Thank you for the tactical advice, Sergeant. It's been noted." The dryness of her tone was surgical. Cole's grin faltered for half a breath, then returned sharper. He wanted control back. He reached forward and accidentally nudged her coffee cup, spilling the black liquid across her tray and sleeve. Whoops, things happen fast out here. Gotta have that situational awareness. The Marines laughed again. It was cruel, but it was also nervous. The kind of laughter that hides guilt before it even settles in. Anna stared at the spreading stain on her cuff, watched the dark liquid crawl across the fabric, then lifted her eyes back to his. Something flickered there, not anger, something colder, a calculation. Like she was measuring him, weighing him, finding him unworthy. Then softly she said, "Accidents happen, Sergeant." She picked up a napkin and dabbed her sleeve clean. No raised voice, no trembling. And somehow that made the entire mess hall quieter. Then the company commander appeared, Major Renner, the kind of man who always seemed too busy for the people under him. "Sergeant Cole," he said sharply, "don't you have a platoon to supervise? Stop harassing the support staff." Support staff. The insult was casual but clear. Renner gave Anna a glance, her rank, her uniform, her plain insignia, then dismissed her with a sniff. She wasn't important. Cole smirked. The hierarchy had just spoken. He won without even trying. "Yes, sir," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. When the major left, Cole leaned close again. "You have a good day now, ma'am. Try to stay safe." They walked away laughing, louder this time, telling and retelling the story before it had even ended. Anna sat there still. She didn't look after them, didn't glare. She finished her breakfast, slowly. Every movement deliberate, every sound controlled. When she stood, she carried her tray to the disposal window, passing their table on the way. Cole looked up, expecting shame, maybe tears, maybe that quiet retreat that makes bullies feel powerful. Instead, she met his eyes. Her expression was unreadable, perfectly blank, but her gaze, that gaze was something else. A promise, not of revenge, of inevitability. Then she was gone. And somehow, the laughter at Cole's table felt smaller. Outside, the desert sun was brutal, white and merciless. Inside, the air hung heavy, as if even the building knew something had shifted. Anna walked back toward her quarters, coffee stain drying on her sleeve, her mind distant. She learned long ago that silence was armor, that there was power in letting others underestimate you. But still, some part of her hurt, not the kind that shows on the surface, the kind that lives deep behind the ribs, the quiet ache of carrying too much history and seeing too little respect. They thought she was rear echelon. They had no idea. 20 years. 20 years of crawling through darkness, breathing dust and cordite, watching good men die. 20 years of pulling triggers and burying the sound of it afterward. And now this. A cafeteria, a coffee stain, a pack of boys mistaking quiet for weakness. She could live with that. She had lived with worse. Still, she caught herself staring at her reflection in the mess hall door before it closed behind her. The lines at her eyes, the silver in her hair, the faint, almost invisible tattoo peeking from beneath her sleeve, a faded eagle clutching a trident, a pistol, an anchor. She pulled the sleeve down and walked out into the sun. No one noticed. The laughter inside carried on, fading into the hum of the generators. The base dogs barked somewhere beyond the perimeter wall. And the wind, thick with sand, whispered across the wire like an omen. Because the storm was coming. And the woman they'd mocked, the librarian, had survived far worse storms than these. She felt it before she heard it. That low, unnatural vibration in the air, the kind that crawls through your boots before your brain registers danger. Anna had just stepped outside, the midday sun burning white across the Hesco walls, when the first explosion hit. It wasn't distant. It wasn't cinematic. It was close. A pressure wave slammed through the base like a giant exhale of God, turning the world into light and dust. The sound didn't come after. It came with it, a single, all-consuming roar that cracked the air and turned thought to instinct. Her body reacted before her mind did. She dropped low, hand to the ground, scanning direction, origin, cover. Years of muscle memory, firing faster than fear. Inside the mess hall, the sound became shape, a deafening wall of chaos. Trays clattered, lights died, screams tore the air apart. Sergeant Cole hit the ground, disoriented. Miller was already bleeding. And in that single second, all their bravado, all that laughter was gone. They were boys again. And the war didn't care. A second blast hit, closer. Windows shattered inward, spraying glass like shrapnel. The air filled with grit and flame. Mortars, someone screamed, incoming. The word was useless. Everyone already knew. Cole crawled for cover, ears ringing, lungs burning from the dust. He looked around for his squad, saw Davis frozen, eyes wide, rifle still slung. He tried to shout. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. The concussion had stolen his voice. And then through the gray haze of smoke, he saw her. Chief Warrant Officer Anna Sharma. The quiet woman from the corner. The one they'd mocked less than an hour ago. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't running. She was moving. Low, controlled, fluid. While everyone else was stunned, she had already found the pattern. Between the first and second detonations, she'd counted the seconds, triangulated. Mortars probably 82, range maybe 400 meters, firing in a walking pattern bracketing the fob's center. She didn't think these things, she knew them. Instinct hardwired over decades. She slid behind the steel-serving line, solid cover, line of sight to the door, and waited for the next impact. It came, the floor jumped, the ceiling tiles rained down. Men screamed again. Her eyes scanned, fast, calm. Targets, wounded, unarmed, active. Priorities, secure, stabilize, defend. She moved. First to Davis. He was still frozen, staring out the shattered window as smoke and dust poured in. His hands shook, useless at his sides. Anna grabbed the front of his flak jacket and yanked him down behind a concrete pillar. He blinked at her, dazed. "Report," she said sharply. It wasn't a yell, just a tone that cut through the ringing in his ears like a blade. I don't." "Weapon," she snapped. She pointed to the rifle still slung behind him. "Get your weapon in the fight. Window, 2 o'clock, controlled bursts." Something in her voice bypassed panic. It was pure command, precise, surgical, certain. Davis's training re-engaged. He unslung the rifle, chambered a round, and began firing short bursts into the smoke where muzzle flashes flickered. Anna was already moving. She reached Miller next, the youngest. His leg was a dark, wet mess, his face pale and slick with shock. He was trying not to scream, failing. She tore a strip from a tablecloth, ignoring the blood. The wound a through and through upper thigh, not arterial. She pressed gauze deep into the gash, fingers working without hesitation, without mercy. His hands clawed at the floor. She didn't flinch. "Stay down. You're fine," she said, though she knew he was. Then she moved again. Cole, barely regaining his senses, watched from behind a toppled table. Whoever this woman was, she was different. Her movements were too clean, too deliberate, no wasted energy. Every second, every gesture, purpose. She flowed like water through chaos. The mortars shifted further away, walking their fire across the base. Then came the gunfire. Automatic, rhythmic, close. It wasn't random harassment fire. It was an assault. RPGs shrieked overhead. Machine guns hammered the perimeter. Someone yelled, "They're breaching the wire." Cole's hands shook as he tried to load a magazine. His head pounded. The air was thick with smoke and fear. All around him, confusion. And through it all she was still. Anna rose slightly, scanned through the shattered windows, eyes narrowing. Her mind painted the battlefield like a map, angles, positions, distance. Her focus locked on a fallen Marine near the kitchen door, M4 rifle lying inches from his hand. She dropped low and crawled, using the wreckage as cover. Bullets punched holes in the wall inches from her head. She didn't react. She reached the body, slid the rifle free, checked the mag, 18 rounds left. Chambered ready. She adjusted her stance, braced the weapon across an overturned steel table, and sighted down the ACOG scope. Through the smoke, the world sharpened. 3 insurgents, using a burning Humvee for cover, moving to flank. She exhaled slowly. Her finger squeezed. Crack one down. Cracked another. The third turned to run. She led him by half a breath. Crack. Silence. 3 rounds, 3 kills. Cole froze, staring at her. That wasn't Marine Corps marksmanship. That was something else, something colder, older. He felt something in his gut, shame, awe, disbelief, all tangled into one. She turned her head slightly, eyes still scanning. Sergeant Cole. Her voice was calm, level. He blinked, startled. Ma'am. Status, she said. How many of your men can still fight? He counted quickly, brain scrambling. 4, maybe 5, ma'am. Davis is at the window, Miller's hit. Good, she said. Get them organized, overturn those tables, build a line there, she pointed to the east wall. Interlocking fields of fire, redistribute ammo from the dead. Move. Cole didn't argue, didn't question. He just moved. For the first time since he'd joined the Corps, he wasn't barking orders, he was following them. And it felt right. He crawled to Davis, shouting over the gunfire, voice returning. You heard her move, tables up, make cover, go. The Marines scrambled, adrenaline overriding fear. Tables crashed into place, trays filled with dirt for extra protection. A fighting line was born, crude, desperate but functional. And at its center stood the woman they had mocked. Calm, focused, unshakable. Each shot she fired had rhythm, one measured breath between, like punctuation in a story only she knew how to tell. Every muzzle flash she targeted disappeared. The mess hall had become a fortress. The firefight outside intensified. Bullets zipped through the air, clanging off metal, thudding into bodies. Cole crouched beside her, reloading. His hands were steadier now, movements tighter. He glanced at her sleeve, the one still stained with coffee. When she raised her arm to reload, the fabric pulled back slightly. And he saw it. A small faded tattoo. An eagle, a trident, a pistol, an anchor. His breath caught. He knew that symbol. The sealed trident. It wasn't just a mark, it was a lifetime. 2 decades of missions nobody would ever read about. Of kills no one would confirm. Of ghosts that never came home. And she had been sitting in a cafeteria, eating powdered eggs while he laughed at her. Cole felt sick. The realization hit harder than the explosions. He looked back at her, really looked, and saw the truth. The quiet, the control, the lack of fear, it wasn't detachment. It was discipline. It was survival. She wasn't fighting for pride. She was fighting like someone who had already died 1,000 times in other wars. Outside, another mortar round slammed into the base. The lights flickered again. Anna didn't look up. Reload, Sergeant, she said quietly. He obeyed. They fought for another 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Time lost meaning. When the noise finally dipped, Cole crouched beside her, chest heaving, lungs burning. He watched her eyes scanning, always moving. No panic, just calculation. She ejected a mag, slammed a new one in, and for a moment the sleeve rolled higher. He saw the faint scarring around the tattoo, old burns healed over. The mark of someone who had been too close to explosions too many times. He looked down, shame tightening in his throat. And when she caught him staring, she didn't speak. Just met his eyes, calm, unreadable, then turned back to the window. The sound of distant gunfire echoed through the ruined hall. Men groaned. The air stank of blood and metal. Cole swallowed hard. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Outside, another round whistled in closer this time. Anna's eyes narrowed. "Down," she said softly. The explosion hit like thunder. The world went white again. The ringing faded slow this time. The air was thicker. Cole blinked through the smoke. His ears bled. He couldn't hear his own breathing. But through the dust, she was still standing. Anna Sharma, the librarian. Gray hair, calm eyes, rifle steady. And for the first time since the attack began, the Marines around her started to believe they might actually live. Because whatever she was, soldier, ghost, legend, she wasn't afraid. And fear, Cole realized, was contagious. But so was courage. He reloaded, braced his rifle, and shouted the words that made no sense an hour ago, but made perfect sense now. "Orders, ma'am." She exhaled once. "Hold," she said simply. And they did. Because sometimes leadership doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers. And everyone still hears it. How long had it been since the first blast? 10 minutes, 40. Time didn't exist inside that ruin anymore, only noise, movement, survival. The mess hall was smoke and shadow now. The walls, once sterile white, were painted in dust and blood. The air stung the eyes, thick with burned insulation and cordite. Outside, the fight still raged, a relentless rhythm of gunfire and screams carried on the desert wind. Inside, something else had taken root: order. Under her voice, calm, clipped, unshakable, chaos was bending. Anna Sharma moved between positions like a ghost, rifle close, eyes everywhere. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. Every command was precise, measured, and utterly final. Davis, window 3. 2-round bursts controlled, don't chase shadows. Miller, stay conscious, bite this. She shoved a stick between his teeth as she tightened his bandage. You'll live. Cole, shift your field of fire. Watch the south wall. They're probing the flank. She spoke like someone who already knew how this would end. And the Marines, these same men who'd mocked her that morning, now followed her word like scripture. The mess hall was their whole world now. A fortress of overturned tables, sandbags, and shattered pride. Cole glanced at her as he reloaded, sweat running down his temples, mixing with grime. She was crouched low, scanning the gaps in the barricade, her expression unreadable. Her hands moved with that same terrifying efficiency, stripping a mag, checking rounds, tapping it back in with a practiced slap. Every few seconds she fired. Just one shot, always one. And every time, someone outside screamed and fell. Cole had never seen anything like it. "Davis," she called suddenly. He flinched, snapping back to reality. "Ma'am." "You're flinching before every shot. Stop it. Control your breathing." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. You'll stay alive longer that way." Her tone wasn't harsh. It was factual. Advice from someone who'd learned it the hard way, probably more than once. Then quiet, a lull between assaults. The only sound was the low hum of burning fires outside and the steady tick of shell casings rolling across the floor. Cole's mind finally began to catch up. He looked around at the surviving Marines, 6 of them, maybe 7, still able to fight. The rest were wounded, unconscious, or gone. And there she was, in the middle of it all, calm as still water. He crawled closer, voice low. "Ma'am, who the hell are you?" She didn't look at him. She just adjusted her scope and said quietly, "Someone who's done this before." Then she fired again, A single deliberate shot. A figure fell outside the window. Her words hit harder than the rifle. She wasn't bragging, she was remembering. Outside, the gunfire grew distant. The enemy was regrouping, repositioning. Anna knew what that meant. The next wave would be bigger, closer, more precise. "Ammo check," she ordered. Cole answered first. 2 mags left, maybe 3 per man if we pool it. She nodded. "Good, we'll make them count." Cole hesitated. "Ma'am, we can't hold this forever. Command." "Command gone," she interrupted softly. "You saw the impacts. The TOC took a direct hit. No one's coming." He swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" She looked at him, not with sympathy but with understanding. "What we always do," she said. "We fight until it's done." Then she turned away, scanning through her scope again. For a long moment, Cole just watched her. The quiet authority in her movements, the control in her breathing, the absolute absence of fear. Something in him shifted, something fundamental. He'd spent his career thinking leadership meant being loud. She was showing him it meant being certain. Then the radio crackled. Cole froze. The device had been dead since the first blast, the antenna bent and coated in soot. Now, through the static, a broken voice. "Yon read me, this is command." Cole grabbed it, fumbling. "Command, this is Bravo 16. "Give it to me," Anna said. She took the handset, adjusted the squelch with expert fingers and keyed the mic. "Unknown station, this is Sierra 4. Say again, over." The voice came back clearer now. "This is actual Major Renner. My TOC's gone. Platoon commanders are KIA or missing. What's your status?" Cole's eyes widened. The major, he was alive. Anna's tone didn't change. "Actual, this is Sierra 4. We're fortified in the dining facility. 7 effective personnel, multiple wounded, holding western sector. Request QRF status." A long pause. Then Renner's voice, thin, cracking. "QRF is they're not coming. The entire base is compromised. We're on our own." Cole felt his stomach drop. He looked at Anna expecting shock, fear, anything. Instead, she just nodded slightly. "Roger that, actual. Then we hold. Consolidate survivors if you can and move to our position. We'll cover your approach." There was silence on the other end. Then Renner demanded, "Who is this? Identify yourself." Anna paused. Her thumb hovered over the mic button for a beat. "This is Chief Warrant Officer 4 Sharma," she said finally. Then calm and absolute, "We're busy, Major. Move now if you're coming. Sierra 4 out." She set the radio down like it was nothing. Cole just stared at her. Did you just dismiss a field-grade officer?" She didn't answer. She was already scanning the perimeter again. Cole almost laughed, not out of humor but disbelief. She'd just taken command of the entire fight, and the major had let her. Outside, gunfire flared again. The insurgents were closing in for another push. "Contact left," Davis shouted. "Window 200 meters." Anna was already there, on it. She fired twice, clean, surgical. 2 silhouettes collapsed into the dust. Cole yelled over the roar. "They've got a .50 out there, ma'am, heavy gun chewing the wall." She looked toward the sound, the rhythmic hammer of the DSHK tearing chunks from their barricade. She assessed it in one glance. "Cole, Davis, other Miller, you're going to give me 30 seconds of suppression, all you've got, left of that gun position, keep them blind." Cole frowned. "What about you?" She was already moving. "Flanking through the kitchen," she said. "I'll end it." "Ma'am, that's suicide." Her only response was, "Starting in 5, fire on my mark." Cole hesitated, then saw something in her eyes that killed the argument. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Marines opened up, unleashing every round they had left in their mags. The heavy gun wavered. the shooters ducking as lead tore up their cover. Anna flowed through the doorway, disappearing into the shadows. Cole counted in his head. 25, 26, 27. Then 3 sharp cracks. Not the wild rhythm of marine fire, not the clumsy burst of the insurgents. Single shot, deliberate, precise. The .50 stopped firing. Silence again. Cole risked a look over the barricade. The machine gun team was down, 4 bodies sprawled around the weapon. And then he saw her stepping out of the smoke at the far side of the mess hall, rifle low, her movements calm as ever. "Position cleared," she said simply. "Reload and redistribute ammo." She might as well have been giving a weather report. Cole stared at her, awe written all over his face. He wasn't alone. The surviving Marines, every one of them, looked at her differently now. The fear outside was still there, but inside something else had replaced it: belief. She wasn't just keeping them alive, she was leading them. And they would follow her anywhere. As the sun sank, the firefight outside began to ebb. The enemy had been beaten back for now. The base beyond the walls was gone, silent except for the faint crackle of fire and the occasional dull thud of secondary explosions. Cole slumped against a wall, breathing hard. Across from him, Davis was rewrapping Miller's bandage, whispering something that might have been a prayer. And in the middle of the room, Anna stood alone, reloading. Every movement deliberate, efficient. Like she'd done this too many times before. Cole watched her in silence, his chest tight. He'd mocked her, doubted her. Now he'd seen what she was, what she'd always been. And yet, there was something about her that wasn't just lethal. It was lonely. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of men who'd survived things they shouldn't have. The kind of look that said survival wasn't always victory. He wanted to say something, anything. But there was nothing that wouldn't sound small next to what she'd just done. So he stayed quiet. The fires outside flickered, painting her face in orange light. For a second he thought she looked almost sad. Then she said softly, not looking at anyone, "They'll be back before dawn." No one argued. They just nodded, checked their weapons, and waited. Because when Anna Sharma said something, it wasn't prediction. It was truth. And the truth was coming back with the sunrise. When the sun went down, the real fear began. Daylight had given them illusions, shapes to shoot at, smoke to read, movement to follow. But now the desert swallowed everything. The base was nothing but black shapes and red firelight. The air hummed with the aftermath of battle, static in the air, the metallic sting of blood and gunpowder. Inside the mess hall, time had stopped again. The wounded moaned quietly. The survivors sat against the barricade, rifles in hand, faces gray with exhaustion and disbelief. They lived through the first wave, but everyone knew that wasn't the end. The enemy wasn't retreating, they were regrouping. And Anna Sharma, the woman they'd mocked over breakfast, was already moving, already planning. She crouched by the window, eyes reflecting the faint orange glow from burning vehicles outside. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "Cole, take Davis, check the back entrance, reinforce it with whatever you can find." "Yes, ma'am." He didn't question her anymore. None of them did. Cole grabbed Davis, and together they crawled through the debris-strewn hall. The once clean floors were smeared with soot and blood, scattered with trays, bullet casings, torn uniforms. Every sound echoed too loudly. They reached the rear service door, a narrow steel frame bent inward from the shockwave of earlier impacts. Cole tested it. It groaned but held, barely. He stacked crates and steel trays against it anyway. Davis helped, eyes darting constantly toward the shadows. "You think they'll come this way?" Davis asked. Cole nodded. "If she said they will, they will." Davis didn't reply. There wasn't much to say. When they returned to the main room, Anna was kneeling beside a wounded Marine, cutting a strip of cloth from her own undershirt to make a bandage. Her sleeves were rolled up, and under the dim light, Cole saw the tattoo again, the trident, the eagle, the pistol, the anchor. And for a second, he wasn't looking at a woman anymore. He was looking at something else, a weapon, forged by time and war. He didn't say a word, just watched. She tied the cloth off, firm but careful. The young Marine winced. "You're not dying today," she said simply. The kid tried to smile. "Yes, ma'am." She stood, grabbed her rifle, and looked to the others. "Reload, hydrate, check your fields of fire. You've got 10 minutes before the next push." It wasn't a guess, it was certainty. Outside, the desert was whispering, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Cole crouched beside her. "Ma'am, how do you know they'll come again?" Anna's eyes didn't move from the window. "Because if I were them," she said softly, "I'd want to finish the job." Her voice carried something else, not fear, not anger, memory. For a moment she wasn't here, she was somewhere else. Another base, another night. Another time when the world had tried to erase her and failed. Then she blinked, and the present returned. "Davis," she said, "get that generator line reconnected. We'll need the emergency lights back. They'll hit under cover of dark." Davis scrambled to obey. Cole studied her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You've done this before." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were calm, but her words came with weight. "Too many times." Then a sound. A faint metallic clatter outside. Not gunfire, not wind. A boot. Anna froze, eyes narrowing. "Positions," she whispered. Instantly, the room came alive. Davis ducked behind a table, Cole took the left flank, and the others aimed at the shattered windows. Silence. Then movement. Figures in the dark. Low, cautious. Anna exhaled. "Wait." She tracked through the scope, eyes narrowing. 3 men, no night vision, moving by memory and moonlight. They crept along the edge of the burning Humvee, rifles up. "Closer," she murmured. One took point, the other 2 flanked left. She waited until they crossed the imaginary line she'd drawn in her mind, 25 meters. Then she squeezed the trigger. Crack! The lead man dropped instantly. Now she barked. The Marines opened up in a precise, coordinated burst, a wall of fire that ripped through the darkness. The other 2 went down before they could even return fire. Then silence again. No one spoke. Cole looked over at her, chest heaving. "You knew the range," he said. Anna ejected her mag and reloaded, expression unreadable. "I counted their steps." He stared. She wasn't human, not in the way the rest of them were. She was rhythm and reaction and quiet death. Outside, the desert went silent again, too silent. Then distant shouting. Dozens of voices. More movement. "Contact," Davis yelled. And suddenly, the world erupted again. Tracer rounds slashed through the night, lighting the walls in red and green flashes. RPGs screamed overhead. The insurgents were coming full force now, maybe 50, maybe more. Anna's voice cut through the chaos. "Cole right side. Davis suppress the center. Keep your barrels cool, short bursts." She was firing 2, 1 shot, 1 hit. Every round counted. A grenade clinked through the broken window. "Move," she shouted, diving behind the steel counter. The explosion blew out what was left of the glass, throwing dust and shrapnel across the room. Cole coughed, ears ringing. "We can't hold this." Anna didn't even look at him. "Yes, we can." She grabbed the radio, toggled it back on. Static screamed. Then faintly, a voice. "Is actual. We're moving your position, taking fire, 2 survivors." It was Major Renner. Anna keyed the mic. Copy actual, pop smoke and move west. We'll cover your approach. Reneur's reply was lost in static. She turned to Cole. Smoke grenade now. He fumbled through a pack, found one and yanked the pin. The orange plume poured out the window. Suppress that rooftop, she ordered. They fired, lighting up the dark. Through the smoke, silhouettes appeared, running, stumbling. Friendly. Cole shouted, it's them, the Major's group. Keep them covered, Anna barked. They fired in controlled bursts, driving the insurgents back long enough for the survivors to sprint across the open space. Seconds later, the door burst open. Major Reneur stumbled inside, bleeding from his arm, face streaked with soot. 2 Marines followed, one limping badly. Hold your fire, Cole yelled. The newcomers collapsed behind the barricade, gasping for air. Reneur looked up and froze. He saw her, standing in the half-light, rifle still smoking, eyes sharp and steady. Chief Sharma, he said, voice hoarse with disbelief. She didn't salute, didn't bow. Just nodded, Major. He glanced around at the fortified mess hall, the disciplined defenders, the sandbagged windows. The place looked more like a command post than a cafeteria. What the hell, he began. Status, she interrupted. How many men left? 2, he swallowed hard. The rest didn't make it. She nodded, already turning away. Cole, integrate them into the line. We'll rotate sectors every 10 minutes. The attack not over. Reneur stared at her, stunned by the certainty in her voice. He looked at Cole, who was already obeying. What's going on here, Sergeant? Cole didn't look up. We're following orders, sir. Whose orders? Cole met his eyes then. Hers. Reneur blinked, the weight of that answer landing heavy. He looked back at Anna. She was crouched behind the barricade again, reloading, calm amid the chaos. He saw the trident tattoo on her arm, faint, scarred, unmistakable. Recognition dawned. Holy your Nix, he whispered. The name hung in the air like a ghost. Even Cole looked up. Nix. Reneur nodded slowly. She was a legend, back in Iraq, early 2000s, one of the first women in special operations support. Then she went dark, disappeared. Rumor was she ran black missions, things that never made it to paper. Anna didn't respond, didn't even glance at them. Cole swallowed hard. That's real. Reneur nodded. Oh, it's real. They all looked at her differently now. The quiet woman who'd eaten eggs alone in the corner that morning wasn't just a veteran. She was a myth wearing human skin. Outside, the gunfire started again, closer this time. Anna didn't turn, didn't acknowledge the name. She just said softly, stay focused. The legend won't keep you alive, only discipline will. Then she raised her rifle. The next wave hit like a hammer. Dozens of insurgents storming through the smoke. The mess hall became hell again, gunfire, shouting, flashes of light. Anna moved like shadow, firing, ducking, reloading, commanding. Her voice never wavered. Right flank 2 down, shift fire. Cole, watch the breach point. Davis, conserve ammo, you're shooting blind. Every word carried calm, control, certainty. Even Major Reneur found himself following her lead. He yelled over the din, orders, Chief. Anna didn't hesitate. Hold the line, at dawn we move. Reneur blinked. Move where? To whatever's left, she said. It wasn't defiance, it was survival. And somehow, hearing her say it made it feel possible. The fight raged for another hour before the attacks thinned. The enemy pulled back into the night, dragging their wounded, leaving silence in their wake. The Marines slumped where they stood, too exhausted to speak. Anna stayed at the window, rifle still up, scanning the dark. Cole limped over, sweat streaked with ash on his face. They're gone, he said quietly. She didn't look away, for now. Her voice was softer now, almost sad. "They'll come again, but not tonight." Cole swallowed, glancing toward the others. They were barely conscious, drained, filthy, trembling from adrenaline. He looked back at her. "Ma'am, how do you keep it together?" Finally, she looked at him. For the first time, he saw the cracks faint, hidden deep behind her composure. "I don't," she said quietly. "I just never let it show." Then she turned away again, her silhouette framed by the fire still burning beyond the shattered walls. Outside, the horizon was beginning to pale, not dawn yet, but close. And inside that ruined cafeteria, the men who had mocked her in the morning now waited for her next breath to decide their fate. Because when the world fell apart, she didn't just survive it. She commanded it. And by the time the first light touched the desert floor, there was no more doubt. Anna Sharma wasn't a myth. She was the reason they were all still alive. Dawn came without color. The horizon bled gray through the smoke, soft and cold, painting the base in ghostlight. The fires were dying, the mortars silent, the air still heavy with dust that tasted of iron and loss. Inside the mess hall, silence was louder than the gunfire had been. No one spoke, no one moved. They were all listening for footsteps, engines, another blast, anything. But there was only the slow crackle of embers and the distant hum of wind across the wire. They had survived the night. Barely. Cole sat slumped against the barricade, rifle across his lap, eyes red and sunken. His hands trembled as he tried to light a cigarette, and the lighter clicked uselessly in the thin dawn air. Across the room, Davis slept sitting up, chin against his chest, still gripping his weapon. The wounded lay lined against the far wall, some breathing shallowly, others too still to tell. And Anna Sharma, she wasn't sleeping. She sat near the kitchen door, her back straight, eyes scanning the room with the same focus she'd had during the fight. In her lap, her rifle lay disassembled across a clean rag. Each piece, the receiver, the bolt, the firing pin, gleamed faintly in the dim light. She wasn't cleaning it out of necessity. She was cleaning it like a ritual. A soldier's prayer made of oil and discipline. Cole watched her through half-lidded eyes, too tired to speak but unable to look away. The woman who had walked into this room yesterday morning, quiet, ignored, unassuming, was gone. Or maybe, he thought, she'd always been this and they'd just been too blind to see it. He looked around at the handful of Marines still breathing. Each one was alive because of her, because of the calm voice that never cracked, the certainty that didn't falter even when everything else had. And now, as dawn crept in, that same voice was silent, not with exhaustion but with thought. He forced himself up, his joints screaming in protest. The floor crunched under his boots, broken glass, spent brass, burnt insulation. Every step echoed too loud. When he reached her, she didn't look up. "You should rest," he said quietly. "I will," she replied, her tone was even, "when they're safe." He glanced around. "They're as safe as anyone can be out here." Her hands didn't stop moving. "That's not safety," she said softly. "That's survival. There's a difference." Cole didn't answer. He just stood there, watching the gray streaks of dawn touch her face. He wanted to apologize, wanted to tell her he was sorry for the jokes, the arrogance, the spilled coffee. But something in her presence made words like that feel cheap. So instead he asked, "How long were you in, ma'am, before all this?" She paused just long enough for him to notice. 20 years, she said. Mostly special operations, mostly places we weren't supposed to be. He whistled quietly. "And you ended up here, in a logistics slot." She reassembled the bolt carrier group, her movements crisp, controlled. "Everyone ends up somewhere," she said. Her voice had that quiet weight, the kind that came from seeing too many endings. Cole crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "Major Renner, he called you Nix, that true?" Her hands stopped, For the first time, she looked at him directly. Her eyes were unreadable. "That was a long time ago," she said. "Guess legends don't die easy," he said. A faint hint of a smile, or maybe just the shadow of one, touched her mouth. "Legends are just stories told by people who weren't there." She slid the upper receiver into place, the metal clicking softly. "I was there." Cole didn't press. Some silences weren't meant to be filled. Instead, he reached into his vest and pulled out a canteen, offered it to her. She took it, drank once, and handed it back. He noticed the small tear in her sleeve, the dried blood underneath. "You're hit." "Through and through," she said. "Nothing vital." "You stitched it yourself." She nodded once. Field habit, needle thread, no waiting for medics. He shook his head. "You're something else, ma'am." Her gaze softened just a little. "I'm just practiced." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they'd survived settling over them. From outside came the distant chop of rotor blades, faint, far away. Cole tensed. "That evac." "Maybe," Anna said, "or maybe someone else's bad luck." He moved to the window, scanning the horizon through the smoke. Two dark specks against the rising sun. "Helicopters." He exhaled. "Looks like ours." Anna stood, shouldering her rifle. "Then we hold till they land." She walked to the center of the room, her boots crunching on debris. "Listen up," she called. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Every head lifted. "We've got birds inbound," she said. "Medevac or recon, doesn't matter. We hold until they're down and secure. No one breaks formation, no one loses focus. You're still in a fight until you're on that bird, understood?" The answer came, weak but unified. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once. "Good, then let's finish this." The next 20 minutes stretched like hours. The helicopters grew louder, the thump of their rotors echoing across the barren wasteland. With every rotation, the hope in the room grew, and with it, the fear that it might be taken away. Cole watched Anna the entire time. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't let hope soften her vigilance. Hope, he realized, was a luxury she couldn't afford. The first bird banked low over the perimeter, kicking up a storm of dust. A loudspeaker blared through the static. "Hold position, this is QRF-1. We have visual on survivors." Cheers rose from the men, quiet, hoarse, but real. Anna didn't move. "Eyes up," she said. "They'll hit us one more time before the landing, always do." Cole frowned. They wouldn't. A mortar shell slammed into the outer wall, cutting him off. The room shook violently. Men ducked instinctively. "Positions," she barked. In seconds, the survivors were back behind the barricade, firing through the dust. The insurgents had been waiting for the sound of the evac, waiting for desperation. But this time, the defense wasn't chaos. It was symphony. They fired in rhythm, controlled, disciplined. Her voice guided them through every burst. "Left flank, 2 more. Short bursts conserve ammo." "Good shot, Davis." The helicopter guns answered, miniguns roaring, cutting through the attackers in a hail of red tracers. And then, as suddenly as it began, the shooting stopped. Silence. The door burst open, and armored figures swept in. QRF soldiers, faces masked by goggles and dust. "Friendly, friendly," one shouted. Anna lowered her weapon slowly. The men exhaled in disbelief. The sound of engines and shouted orders replaced the quiet dread that had filled the room for hours. They were saved. But she didn't look relieved. Cole noticed it first, the way her shoulders stayed tense, her eyes scanning, her expression unreadable. She'd seen too many rescues turn into recoveries. A medic approached her. "Ma'am, we've got wounded transport priority." "Start with them," she said, nodding toward the Marines. "I'm fine." Cole stepped forward. "You're going first, ma'am." She turned to him. A faint trace of something, not anger, not pride, maybe gratitude flickering behind her gray eyes. "Sergeant," she said softly, "leaders don't leave first." And that was the end of it. He didn't argue. He just nodded and turned to help carry the wounded. One by one, they were loaded onto stretchers and passed to the medics. The helicopters thundered overhead, their wash stirring the ashes of the mess hall, lifting them into the air like ghosts. When it was finally her turn to step outside, the sun was high, washing the fob in harsh, colorless light. The battlefield looked smaller in daylight. The places where men had died looked almost peaceful. Anna stopped at the doorway, glancing once at the ruined tables, the shattered windows, the burned floor where coffee had spilled yesterday morning. Cole came up beside her, rifle slung, face streaked with dirt. He followed her gaze. "Hard to believe that was yesterday," he said quietly. She nodded once. "Feels like another life." "Ma'am," he hesitated. "About before the cafeteria, the jokes, the coffee, She cut him off gently. "You learned that's enough." He swallowed, throat tight. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked out at the landing zone where the medics worked, her eyes distant. "Now we rebuild," she said, "until the next time." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. As they walked toward the waiting helicopter, he realized something he hadn't before. She wasn't unbreakable. She was already broken. She just refused to stop moving. And maybe, he thought, that's what strength really was. When they reached the bird, she stepped aside, letting him board first. He hesitated. "You're sure?" Her reply was calm, steady, final. "Always last out." The rotors screamed louder. The dust storm swallowed them both. He climbed aboard, watching through the open door as she stood there, small, solitary, framed against the smoke-stained sky. The pilot's voice cut through the headset. "Everyone in." "Everyone who's left," Cole said quietly. The helicopter lifted off, rising above the ruined base. Below them, Anna Sharma grew smaller, a still figure amid the wreckage, her shadow long across the ground. Cole kept his eyes on her until she vanished in the haze. For a long time, no one spoke. Then softly, almost to himself, he said, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." No one replied. But everyone heard. She'd forgotten how loud silence could be. 3 days after the extraction, the desert was still in her ears, the low hum of the rotors, the scream of mortar fire, the sound of men breathing through fear. Yet now there was only the whir of air conditioning and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Fort Coronado wasn't a base. It was a waiting room for ghosts. White walls, polished floors, no dust, no smell of oil or cordite, just the echo of boots and clipped voices calling names that didn't matter. Anna Sharma sat in the debriefing room, hands folded on the table, uniform pressed, eyes hollow. The officer across from her, Lieutenant Harrison, Intelligence Division, flipped through his datapad like he was reading a grocery list. "Chief Sharma, your actions on Site Delta resulted in the confirmed neutralization of 37 hostile combatants and the preservation of 8 coalition lives." He looked up, expression blank. "You realize that's above any recorded defense ratio for an unfortified post." She didn't answer. He waited, then sighed, tapping his stylus against the screen. "Command wants a statement. They're preparing a citation. You'll be." "I don't want one," she said quietly. He blinked. "Excuse me. I don't want a citation, or a commendation, or my name on a report." The lieutenant frowned. "Chief, with respect, that's not your call." She looked up then, calm, steady. "It is if they can't find the paperwork." He hesitated, uncertain whether she was joking. Her face told him she was. "Chief," he said carefully, "the major already filed your name in the after-action logs. He described you as the decisive factor in." He's alive, that's enough. Harrison studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, made a note, and said quietly, "Dismissed, Chief." She stood, saluted, and walked out. The hallway outside was long and bright, lined with framed photos, men in dress blues, shaking hands with generals. The smiles looked heavy, like they'd been ordered. She passed them without looking. Outside, the California air was sharp and cool. The base stretched out in neat lines of concrete and steel. A convoy rolled by, the engines humming a rhythm too clean to be real. She stopped near the chain-link fence, watching the horizon fade into haze. Somewhere out there was still sand, still fire, still men like Cole and Davis trying to remember what quiet sounded like. A voice broke her thoughts. "Ma'am." She turned, it was Cole. He was in a sling now, arm bandaged, uniform half-pressed like he'd given up halfway through. The same exhaustion still lived in his eyes, but something else had replaced the fear, respect. "Permission to speak freely?" he asked. She gestured toward the bench by the fence. "Always." They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind carried the sound of distant target practice, sharp cracks that made both of them flinch before they realized it wasn't incoming. Cole ran a hand through his hair. "They say they're sending me home, medical leave." She nodded. "You earned it." "Doesn't feel like earning," he said. "Feels like leaving." He glanced sideways at her. "They're calling you a hero, you know." Words already moving through the ranks. Her expression didn't change. Heroes are useful when command needs to sell hope. He frowned. "You don't believe in that." She looked out through the fence. "I believe in quiet work, in people who do what has to be done when no one's watching." He let that sit for a moment, then said softly, "You think about going back out there?" "I never left," she said. He smiled a little, not amusement, just recognition. "You remind me of my old co. He used to say the same thing." "Did he make it home?" she asked. Cole looked down. "Yeah, physically." The silence that followed was heavy but clean, the kind that meant truth had been spoken and didn't need to be dressed up. After a while he said, "I keep replaying that first day, the cafeteria, the way we treated you feels like a different world." "It was," she said. "You could have said something about who you were." "I shouldn't have to," she replied. That shut him up. He nodded slowly, absorbing it. "Guess we judge too quick." "Everyone does," she said softly, "until life teaches them patience." They sat there as the sky deepened into late afternoon, the sun turning the fence silver. Cole broke the quiet again. "Do you ever wonder why you made it out when others did?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was low. "Every day, but wondering doesn't change it. The only thing you can do with the why is live." He watched her, trying to understand that kind of acceptance. It looked heavy. It looked peaceful. "I'm heading home tomorrow," he said finally. "Ohio, my mom's place. She keeps asking what she can send the guys still out there." Anna smiled faintly. "Coffee, always coffee." He laughed softly, the first real sound of life he'd made in days. "Yes, ma'am." Then his tone shifted. "What about you? Where do you go now?" She shrugged. "There's always another assignment. They'll find a quiet way to put me somewhere people don't ask questions." "That sound like what you want." She thought about that, then said, "Want stopped mattering a long time ago." Cole looked at her, really looked. He wanted to say something, to tell her she deserved rest, that she'd done enough, that the world owed her peace. But he knew she wouldn't believe it. So instead he stood and offered his good hand. "For what it's worth, ma'am, thank you for all of it." She shook his hand firmly. "You earned your place, Sergeant, don't forget that." He nodded once, then walked away down the long row of hangars, fading into the sunlight. She watched until he was gone. That night she couldn't sleep. The barracks were too clean, the bed too soft. The hum of the HVAC felt like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes muzzle fire, the mess hall walls shaking, the kid with the bandaged shoulder whispering, "Yes, ma'am." She sat up, swung her legs off the bed, and stared at the floor until the clock read 02:47. Then she dressed quietly, laced her boots and walked outside. The night air was cool and empty. The stars over the Pacific were sharp enough to cut. She walked past the silent motor pool, past the guarded gate, until she reached the edge of the bluff overlooking the sea. The waves crashed far below, steady, patient, eternal. She took off her cap and let the wind tangle her hair. 20 years, she thought. 20 years of orders, of missions without names, of coming home to places that didn't feel like home. And for what? For 8 lives saved. For one more base that would be rebuilt and forgotten. A voice behind her broke the spell. "Didn't think you slept much." She turned. Major Renner stood a few paces back, hands in his pockets, uniform unbuttoned at the collar. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. "Sir," she said. He waved it off. "At ease, Chief, I'm off duty. Hell, I think we both are." He joined her at the railing, staring out at the dark water. For a while they just listened. "You know they're planning to make you an instructor," he said finally. "SEAL training liaison. They want you to teach adaptive leadership under fire." She huffed a dry laugh. "That sounds like a PowerPoint." He smiled faintly. "Everything does now." Then his voice softened. "I read your old file. Half of it's redacted, the other half unbelievable. You were running ops in Mosul when most of my generation was still learning how to shave." She didn't reply. He looked at her profile, the hard lines carved by time and loss. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. "That night when I got there, I thought we were done. I was already making peace with it." She turned slightly, met his eyes. "But you didn't panic," he continued. "You didn't yell or freeze or pray, you just moved. And we followed, because you gave us something no briefing ever did: certainty." He paused, searching for words. "I just wanted you to know that matters. Even if command forgets, we won't." She looked back at the sea. "The only thing that matters is they got out." He nodded slowly. "Still, I thought you should hear it from someone who was there." She said nothing, but when he left she whispered, not to him, not to anyone, "Thank you." The next morning, her orders came through. Temporary reassignment, quiet desk, no press, no ceremony, exactly how she wanted it. As she packed her gear, she found the small metal tag hanging from her duffel zipper, the one that read NYX. A relic from another life. She stared at it for a long time, thumb tracing the worn letters. Then she tucked it into her pocket and closed the bag. Outside, the base was waking up, the rhythm of boots, the call of reveille. Another day beginning for people who hadn't seen what she had. She walked to the motor pool, climbed into the waiting transport, and let the door close behind her. Through the window she watched the ocean fade, replaced by miles of highway, then desert, then nothing. And somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, she allowed herself to feel it, the exhaustion that wasn't just physical. The kind that came from carrying stories no one would ever hear. But that was fine. Some stories weren't meant for medals or cameras. Some stories were meant to stay quiet, whispered between survivors, or carried alone. She leaned back against the seat, eyes half closed. Outside, the morning sun rose over the endless stretch of road, turning the dust into gold. And for the first time in years, Anna Sharma let herself breathe, not in relief, but in acceptance. Because she knew the truth now. The war never ends, it just changes its shape. The first thing she noticed about Coronado Training Range wasn't the ocean. It was the silence before dawn. The kind that came before recruits filled the air with shouting, boots thudding against sand, and the relentless rhythm of survival being taught from scratch. Anna Sharma stood at the edge of the beach. The Pacific stretched wide and dark before her. The same waves that had swallowed years of her life, training, testing, becoming, rolled against the shore with that old, patient rhythm. It should have felt like coming home. It didn't. Her reflection in the wet sand looked like a stranger wearing her name. The lines on her face weren't from age but memory. Her eyes didn't rest. They scanned out of habit, not fear. Behind her, a whistle blew. "Chief Sharma, recruits are assembled, ma'am." The voice was young, sharp, full of the kind of confidence only the untested had. She turned slowly. 40 candidates stood in formation, eyes straight ahead. Sand clung to their faces, their uniforms already soaked from surf drills. They were trembling, though most tried not to show it. She walked toward them, boots crunching on the gravel. Every step made a few shoulders tighten. She stopped in front of the first row, a line of faces trying to look fearless. One, a young woman barely in her 20s, had eyes that reminded Anna of someone she used to be. Determined, hungry, proud. "What's your name, recruit?" Anna asked. "Vasquez, ma'am." "Why are you here?" "To serve, ma'am." Anna studied her a moment longer. "That's not enough. Everyone serves something. The question is, what are you willing to lose for it?" The young woman hesitated. A flicker of uncertainty broke through her rehearsed tone. Anna moved down the line. Another recruit, a man this time tall, nervous, with the kind of hands that hadn't yet known violence. "You look scared," she said. He stiffened. "No, ma'am." "Good," she said. "Fear keeps you human. Forget that and you stop surviving." A ripple passed through the line. Confusion, curiosity, unease. Anna could feel it. The recruits didn't know what to make of her. She wasn't loud. She didn't bark. She didn't carry the swagger of instructors who wanted to be feared. She just spoke softly, like someone who had nothing left to prove. And that somehow made her more dangerous. The first week was chaos. Recruits collapsed during swim drills, lost their rifles during field navigation, shouted at each other under stress. She never raised her voice. She watched, corrected, let them fail. Then she made them try again. When one froze under simulated fire, she didn't yell. She crouched beside him, calm, steady. "Close your eyes," she said. "Listen, the sound of gunfire is the same every time. It's rhythm. Learn it and it stops controlling you." By the end of the week, they called her the ghost. Because she seemed to appear everywhere, wordless, impossible to predict. And because none of them had seen her sleep. But when lights went out and the camp fell silent, Anna would sit alone on the empty dock, boots off, feet in the cold water. The memories came quieter now, less like explosions, more like echoes. Cole's voice. The mess hall. The smell of smoke and metal. The sound of her name being called through dust and fire. She thought she'd left it behind, but the ocean had a cruel sense of humor. It kept bringing things back. One night around 2300 hours, a shadow approached the dock. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked without turning. The voice behind her hesitated. "No, ma'am." It was Vasquez, the same young recruit with the fierce eyes. Anna gestured for her to sit. The girl did, boots dangling over the water. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the tide. Finally Vasquez said quietly, "Ma'am, how do you stop the noise after missions, after what you've seen?" Anna looked out at the dark horizon. "You don't," she said. "You just learn to make room for it." The girl nodded slowly. "I heard stories about you, that you were in the SEALs, that you—" "Stories change with every person who tells them," Anna interrupted. "Truth doesn't matter as much as what you do next." Vasquez hesitated. "You really think someone like me can make it?" Anna turned to her, meeting her eyes. "I think you already did. You showed up. The rest is pain, and pain is easy to find." The girl smiled faintly. "That's small," uncertain gratitude of someone hearing what they needed instead of what they wanted. Then Anna added softly, "But remember something. This uniform doesn't make you more human. Sometimes it does the opposite. Don't lose who you are trying to become what they expect." Vasquez nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, ma'am." Anna looked back at the sea. "Get some sleep, recruit." When the girl left, Anna stayed. She sat there until the horizon turned pale and the gulls began to stir. Somewhere deep inside, she wondered if anyone had ever said those words to her, or if she just learned too late what they meant. By the end of the second month, her class had shrunk from 40 to 17. Some had quit. Some had broken down. One had been medevaced after collapsing from exhaustion. Each time Anna said nothing, just logged the name, the reason, the date. Her commanding officer, Captain Rivera, stopped by her office one afternoon, leaning in the doorway with a clipboard. "You're hard on them," he said. She didn't look up from the paperwork. "Life will be harder." He smiled faintly. "Still, they respect you. Even the ones who ring out talk about you like you're a myth." She put down her pen, finally meeting his gaze. "Myths don't bleed, Captain." "Maybe not," he said, "but they teach people what to believe in." She didn't reply, but the words stayed with her long after he left. That night, as the recruits ran their final endurance drill, 6 miles across wet sand under moonlight, she watched from a distance. Vasquez stumbled halfway through, falling to one knee. The others passed her without slowing. Anna didn't move, didn't shout. She waited. And slowly, painfully, Vasquez pushed herself back up and kept running. When the last of them crossed the finish line, soaked, gasping, trembling, Anna finally spoke. "Take a knee." They knelt in the sand, eyes up, sweat running down their faces. She paced before them, hands clasped behind her back. "What you've done here isn't strength," she said quietly. "It's endurance. Strength comes later when you're alone, when no one's watching, and you still choose not to break." Her eyes met Vasquez's briefly. Pain teaches, but so does silence. Learn both. The wind picked up, scattering sand across their faces. None of them moved. Anna turned away, her voice soft now, more to herself than them. "There's no glory in surviving, only duty." Then she walked off into the darkness, leaving them kneeling there, unsure if they'd just been praised or warned. Weeks passed. The recruits finished their cycle. 17 became 14. 14 became 12. Graduation day was cloudless. The parade ground shimmered in sunlight, rows of white caps and dress blues perfectly aligned. Anna stood at the back, arms crossed, watching the ceremony unfold. The commander gave the usual speech: valor, service, honor. Words she'd heard 1,000 times and no longer trusted. Then, at the end, he said something that made her pause. "Today's graduates stand ready to defend freedom, but freedom isn't given, it's carried, by those willing to walk through hell to hold it." Applause rose, loud and proud. But Anna's gaze was on Vasquez, standing tall among the new graduates, eyes steady, jaw set. When the ceremony ended, Vasquez approached her, saluting sharply. "Ma'am," she said, "I wanted to thank you for everything." Anna studied her for a moment. "Don't thank me, earn it every day." "Yes, ma'am." The girl hesitated, then added, "Will I ever see you in the field?" Anna smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 memories. "If you do, you'll wish you hadn't." They both laughed softly, just for a moment, like soldiers and not symbols. Then Vasquez saluted again and walked away, her boots leaving perfect prints in the sand. Anna watched until the crowd thinned, and the field was empty again. The sun hung low, turning everything gold. She stood there a long time, alone with the echo of marching feet and the faint smell of salt on the wind. Then she whispered, so softly the wind almost carried it away. "Maybe that's enough." And for the first time in years, she meant it. It began with a phone call. 3 short rings, a pause, then a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Chief Sharma." Her hand froze above the mug of coffee. "Yes. This is Command Liaison 4. You've been requested for temporary reactivation, priority clearance. You'll be briefed in person." She said nothing. The voice on the other end hesitated. "Ma'am, we understand you're on instructor status, but this comes from higher up. Real-world situation, small unit, unstable region. They asked for you by name." Her voice was quiet when she replied, "No one should know that name anymore." There was a pause. "They do." The line clicked dead. She sat there a moment, staring at the cooling coffee. Outside, the sea crashed against the docks, steady, unconcerned. She thought this part of her life was over. She'd given enough, lost enough. But the war, it seemed, wasn't done with her yet. And maybe she wasn't done with it either. The flight was long. No insignia, no manifest. Just a dark transport with 6 other operatives who spoke little and watched everything. Somewhere over the Atlantic, the youngest among them, a corporal barely 20, leaned forward. "Ma'am, rumor is this op's a ghost job, true?" She glanced at him. "Every job's a ghost job until someone doesn't come back." He nodded, pretending he understood. He didn't, not yet. She closed her eyes and let the engines hum drown the rest of the world. The landing zone was a dust strip carved into the side of nowhere. Old ruins, no comms tower, just the outline of something that used to be civilization. Major Renner was waiting. He looked older now, a scar tracing his jawline, hair grayer, eyes sharper. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "You didn't call me," she replied. He gave a small smile. "I didn't, but someone did. Intel says insurgent remnants reorganized. They took hostages, foreign contractors. You know the terrain better than anyone." Anna looked past him toward the mountains. They looked the same as every other she'd fought in, sharp, empty, indifferent. "What's the real reason I'm here, Major?" He hesitated. "There's a survivor from Delta Base, Davis. He's among the missing." The name hit harder than she expected. Davis, the kid who looked to her for direction, who'd learned discipline in a single night of hell. She nodded once. "Then we bring him home." The op moved fast. 4 hours later they were in the foothills, moving silent through broken stone. The air smelled of dust and diesel. Their comms were dark, their maps unreliable, but Anna didn't need either. Every shadow, every ridge spoke to her like old memories. She led them through the pass, wordless, hands signaling each movement. When they reached the compound, she crouched behind a crumbled wall, eyes tracing the pattern of guards. 2 on the roof, 1 by the generator, a 4th smoking near the gate. She whispered, 3 minutes between rotations, roof first, then gate. They moved like phantoms. The first 2 went down silently, the gate fell next. Inside, the world narrowed to breath and instinct. Gunfire erupted, brief, precise. Then it was over. They breached the main structure, cleared rooms one by one until they reached the last door. Anna stopped. She could hear muffled voices inside, English. She nodded to Renner. He pushed the door open. 4 hostages, 1 soldier bound but alive. "Davis," she breathed. He looked up, bruised, bloodied but breathing. When he saw her, his face crumpled with disbelief. "Chief." "Easy," she said, cutting his restraints. "We're taking you home." He managed a shaky laugh. "You never stay retired, do you?" "Not when people keep making mistakes." She half smiled, pulling him to his feet. They moved fast, but not fast enough. Outside, movement. Gunfire. Ambush. The mountain came alive with muzzle flashes. Renner's voice crackled through the radio. "Contact front and right, 2 dozen at least." Anna pushed Davis down behind the wall, returning fire with sharp, clean precision. Rounds hit stone, throwing sparks and dust. She shouted, "Cover left, flank and suppress." Rainier answered, "Copy." They fought for minutes that felt like years. When her rifle clicked empty, she reached for her sidearm, calm, methodical, eyes cold. She'd done this dance before. It never got easier. One of the insurgents broke through the perimeter, sprinting toward them with a grenade. Anna didn't think, she moved. A single shot sent her mass. He fell. The grenade rolled live. She dove. The explosion lifted her off the ground, slammed her against the wall. For a moment, nothing, no sound, just ringing light and silence. Then distant shouting. "Chief, Chief, you're hit." Rainier's voice again, somewhere far away. She blinked, forcing the world back into focus. Blood ran down her arm, her shoulder burning. "Keep moving," she gasped. They pulled her behind cover. Davis crawled beside her, shaking. "You saved me again." She almost laughed. "Try not to make a habit of it." Rainier shouted over the radio, "Bird inbound, 2 minutes." "Hold the line," she said, reloading with one good arm. They did. For every shot fired, she made one count. Every breath hurt. Every second felt earned. The chopper appeared through the smoke, rotors cutting the dusk. "Go," she yelled. Rainier and the others dragged Davis toward the extraction point. Anna followed, limping, rifle still up. The ground shook under another blast. The last thing she saw before the ramp closed was the mountain, quiet again, smoke curling toward the stars. 3 days later, she woke in a field hospital. Rainier sat by her bed, a mug of cold coffee in his hand. "Welcome back," he said. She tried to sit. Pain stopped her. "How bad?" "Shrapnel, shoulder and ribs. You'll live." She looked around, the others. He smiled. "All alive, Davis too. He's been asking for you." She exhaled slowly. "Good." Rainier leaned back. "Command, calling it a success. They'll probably try to put you on another medal list." "Don't let them." He smirked. "Didn't think you changed." She didn't smile. Some things shouldn't. He studied her for a moment. "You know, Cole wrote me last year," he said. "Said he's back home, teaching at a community college. Says you're the reason he still believes people can change." Anna's gaze softened. "That's his doing. I just reminded him he could." Rainier nodded. "You ever think about taking your own advice?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the window. Beyond the tents, the sun was rising again, the same indifferent sun that had watched everything she'd done and never once judged her for it. "Maybe one day," she said quietly. Weeks passed. Her body healed, but some wounds never would. When she was finally cleared to travel, she didn't return to Coronado. She bought a one-way ticket to Montana. Quiet place, sparse hills, no uniforms, no call signs. She found a small cabin near the river, walls scarred by time, wood smelling faintly of pine and rain. The first night there, she sat on the porch, a mug of coffee in her hands. No noise, no engines, just the wind and the water. She thought of them, Cole, Davis, Vasquez, all the names she'd carried through years of sand and silence. Every face was clear, every voice sharp. She didn't try to forget them. Forgetting was disrespect. Instead, she let them sit beside her, invisible company that asked for nothing but remembrance. The sky darkened, the stars came out one by one. And she realized something. For 20 years, she'd been chasing peace like it was a mission she could complete. But peace wasn't a medal or a discharge paper. It was this. The sound of wind in the trees. The ache in her shoulder reminding her she'd survived. The ghosts that no longer screamed, they just sat quietly now. And that was enough. She smiled small, tired, genuine. Somewhere in the night, an owl called. She raised her mug slightly, as if to toast something unseen. "To the ones who didn't make it," she whispered, "and to the ones who did." The wind shifted, carrying her words into the darkness. For a moment she imagined she heard voices answering, laughter, shouts, 1,000 memories returning her salute. Then silence again. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in 20 years, Anna Sharma didn't feel like a soldier. She felt human. Days later, a letter arrived. Unmarked, hand-delivered. Inside one line, no name, no rank. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She read it twice, then smiled faintly. It wasn't praise, it was understanding. And for her, that was all that ever mattered. The sun rose again over the mountains, spilling gold across the valley. Somewhere far away, another call would come, another war would begin. But not for her. She'd done her part. She'd held the line. And in a world that forgot too easily, she had proven one quiet truth. That strength isn't in shouting, or medals, or headlines. It's in standing alone when you could have walked away, and choosing, again and again, to stay. The world would never know her name. But those who had stood beside her would never forget it. Anna Sharma, the ghost who taught them what resilience really looked like. And when the wind rose again through the trees, carrying the faint sound of the river's song, it almost sounded like the echo of boots on sand, fading, finally, into peace.